I worked on a hospice ward as a CNA. We saw things, especially on the night shift. One incident that was specifically creepy to me, and people think I'm absolutely insane when I talk about it. We had a patient who was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, just like in the movie Split. She had 23 separate personalities, and some of them were seriously violent and scary when they showed themselves. The aide that worked her section on the night she passed away started acting crazy a few days later. Out of the blue, she'd make hurtful comments and get mean with the residents and staff, usually a very sweet woman. I mentioned this to her husband, and he stated that she was acting aggressively at home, too. He had to send their kids somewhere safe because she almost killed their dog, on top of other things he refused to mention. They were afraid. Several shifts I had to work with her were extremely uncomfortable for many reasons, but the creepiest part was that I was having a conversation with her on the walkie radio, only to find out she was on lunch and didn't have a radio with her during the time we'd been talking. She has a very distinctive voice, so I know for a fact it was her. Witnesses can attest to that. I was freaking out really bad. I avoided having to work with her like the plague. She had this dead look in her eyes, and I felt terror just being close to her. We used to be best friends, and had spent a lot of time together, so I was accustomed to know how she was normally, and this was not her. Two other things made people think I'm making all of this up, but I have a recording of the exorcism rite set to music on my playlist. I listened to music quietly with earbuds at work, but there were 3 separate occasions where that song played on my phone while I was in the same area as her. No possible way that she could hear it because of earbuds, and she freaked out like she was in excruciating pain. After a while, I put 2 and 2 together and would start that recording out of earshot several times just to see what would happen, and it was always the same. The second thing was that I would wear a silver triquetra ring on my left hand. I brushed up against her with that hand once and noticed that she flinched in pain. Later, I accidentally, on purpose, grabbed her arm with that hand, and it legit left a huge welt like she was burned. On my way home from work that night, I smelt sulfur in my car, and I got seriously paranoid about it. So I played the exorcism recording, and guess what? The smell dissipated instantly. I saw her at work the next day, and she mentioned waiting for me after work last night but couldn't find me. I was confused because she and her husband left before I got out, and she waved as she walked by. Then I remembered the smell and made the connection. Throughout that day, she was trying to invite me to her house after work. I played it off like I had plans because I was feeling very uncomfortable, and I still didn't know if I was just having an active imagination or if I was face to face with something evil. To be honest, I did have plans. I was my boyfriend's ride home from work that night. When I told her I'd at least have to get him home or I could bring him, she got insistent that she needed me there ASAP. I told her I'd try to make it, and it seemed to appease her. The next day, she was very agitated that I didn't come over. I swear I was hearing her whisper threats under her breath, and I was praying under mine. I asked why it was so important I come over since I'd been so busy, but she said, "I just wanted to get you alone," and smiled at me with cold, dead eyes. From then on, I constantly had an uneasy feeling that I was being watched. I dreaded going to work because my skin would crawl the moment I entered the building, whether she was there or not. The smell of decay and sulfur was overwhelming to me. I'm not religious at all, but I was praying to every god or deity in existence for protection or a sign that I was going crazy, anything. I put on my grandmother's cross pendant, thinking to myself, anything helps. I kid you not. The next time we were alone together, she looked me in the eye and said, "That won't help you. You have no idea what you're dealing with." I simply said, "If I didn't then, why haven't you found a way in yet?" Her only response was, "I will break you one way or another." The second my shift was over, I called in that I quit. While I was getting ready for bed that night, I just remember waking up on the bathroom floor with gashes in my arms. I called my mom, hysterical, saying I was coming home right away. It was 3 a.m. I was 4 hours away in another city. I drove all the way home that morning, didn't even grab my shoes or anything. I'll disclose that I was 5 months pregnant when all this happened, and it's highly possible that I simply experienced stress-induced psychosis. But that doesn't explain the things her husband was texting to me after I confronted him about her behavior, including a video of her growling and acting all tweaked out while he read verses from the Bible and pictures of the bruises she had on her body in the shape of reverse handprints. I am still terrified to this day to go back to that town or anywhere near her, and I have a hard time working night shifts or being around schizophrenic patients. And that's the story of how being a fan of supernatural either saved my life or made me hallucinate about demonic possession.